Happy Wednesday, everybody. My name's Aaron. I'm the co-founder, managing director here at BWG Connect. We're a giant networking and knowledge sharing group. We kicked this off 7.5 years ago, and we do a ton of these events. I spend the majority of my time talking to brands to try to stay on top of the newest trends, strategies, pain points that are out there. When the same topics come up over and over again, we host events like this. We'll do a couple hundred webinars this year, a bunch of podcasts, a bunch of dinners as well. So if you're at any of the big e-commerce shows that are out there, or you're in one of the larger tier 1 cities, let us know, and we'll give you an invite when we show up in town. We're gonna try to push close to 80 dinners this year, and yeah, it's fun. But as we get into the topic for today, from risk to reward, how brand protection drives Amazon revenue, it's amazing to me from this standpoint that this is still one of the top topics that's out there. And I think a lot of that, we kicked off doing webinars on this topic, I think close to 7 years ago. And I think what we've seen is a large portion of brands where it looked like to executive teams growing online was easy during the pandemic and a couple of years after. And now we're at a point in time where profitability is a key focus. And I think executive teams are really open now to listening more than ever before around what does it take? What does enforcement look like? And so we've got some great friends, longtime friends, supporters, partners of the network, working with a ton of brands in it over at Blue Wheel. And we can kind of go around the horn here and make a brief intro before we jump into it. But Zach, I'll kick it over to you. And then if you want to kick it over to Paula, and then we can jump into a little bit of the content for the day. Does that sound good?
That sounds great. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Aaron and I have been connected for a long time. So I'm Zach Riegle. I'm the VP of Sales. I've been here for around 13 years, running all revenue ops for us. Paula, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, sure. Well, I'm Paula. I joined Blue Wheel 6 months ago, but I've been around the brand protection world from the last 5 years.
Awesome. So a little bit about us for anyone that doesn't know. We're a marketplace management and performance advertising agency that supports brands selling on their D2C, their marketplace, or their retail partners, whether that's digital or physical. And today we'll be talking about brand protection, which we like to think of our services as from click to ship. Brand protection as a service is certainly on the ship side. It's a bottom line piece, but it also impacts your performance most likely or most directly on your PDPs and your marketplace advertising. So we'll talk about how we set these policies, what they look like, and then how they impact your business. So our agenda today, Aaron, you and I were talking like a week ago or a couple days ago, and you mentioned that people still kind of don't know where to go with brand protection. There's a lot of tools, but it's for 7 years, you're still having this conversation. So we want to reset, what is brand protection? Why does it matter? What's the role of MAP policies and reseller policy compliance? How should we be approaching? How should brands be approaching brand protection? What are those challenges that brands are seeing as they try to enforce MAP policies and seller policies? And then the impact that brand protection can, will, and should have on your business. And Paula will be sprinkling that with some case studies and customer facts and anecdotes to kind of help us guide our way.
And just as we kick off here, everybody, if you have questions along the way, drop them in the chat, drop them in the Q&A, and we'll answer those. We might save them to the end. We might tackle a couple real time, but we might just stack them all up and capture them at the end. But any of those questions you have, drop them in the chat or the Q&A just so we can capture them, and we'll make sure that we get to them. So, yeah, let's jump into it.
Okay. So before we dive in, let's take a moment to answer an important question. What's brand protection, of course? Many people think it's about just software to fix problems, but it's much more than that. And today we'll explore what brand protection really means, why it's essential for your business, and how it combines the right tools with effective strategies to safeguard your brand. So again, brand protection is not just about buying a software and expecting it to work on its own. Tools play a vital role, but without a proper escalation or enforcement plan, these lose much of their value. At its core, brand protection is a proactive strategy to safeguard your company's intellectual property, reputation, and revenue. Specifically on Amazon, this ideally should involve leveraging tools and strategies to enforce trademark IP rights to protect your brand, monitor and eliminate unauthorized or counterfeit listings that can damage customer trust, maintain consistent pricing and seller behavior to ensure a healthy competitive environment and protect margins. So while tools are important and combining them with clear policies and strategic action is what truly makes brand protection effective. Let's explore a little deeper on the tools Amazon provide for this. Okay, so these tools can be highly effective, but it's important again to understand both their strengths and limitations. First, we have Amazon Brand Registry. This tool gives brands access to advanced features for IP enforcement. It helps protect trademarks, combat counterfeit products. The success here relies on enrolling the correct trademarks in this tool on Amazon or this portal, and maintain a strong acceptance rate for IP claims. That way, the system works effectively and builds credibility with Amazon. Well, that said, brand registry does have limitations. For example, you cannot enforce on map anything or address any map violation matters in brand registry or help remove 100% of unauthorized sellers from the platform. The next program or tool is the transparency program. This program focuses on serialization, where unique codes are assigned to each product. This helps to ensure customers receive authentic items and allows brands to track inventory more effectively. However, implementing this program can be resource intensive. Brand needs to pay for the tags and either place them on their products themselves or pay Amazon to do it for them. Well, this is great for preventing counterfeit. It doesn't stop unauthorized sellers from listing items without these codes. Let me share a quick example to highlight this. I work with a juice brand that was dealing with unauthorized sellers buying 12-pack of their shots, then splitting them into 6-packs and creating new ASINs for this 6-pack package. To enforce in this situation, the brand needed, we explored the transparency program as an option to prevent this to happen. And Amazon explained that it wouldn't prevent sellers from creating new ASINs. So to enforce in this specific situation, the brand needed to go, what was required for transparency program to work in this scenario, brand needed to create its own 6-pack version, then connect this listing, create the ASIN on their own, connect the listing with the rest of the listings around, and then enforce. So imagine creating a new ASIN, the packaging, labeling, everything. It was not practical. So while transparency program can help with counterfeit issues, it's not a complete solution. And well, lastly, we have the Project Zero. These programs use machine learning to detect and remove counterfeit listings. It allows brands to control over their counterfeit enforcement process, mostly approving almost immediately the counterfeit claims you submit through this program. However, they are requirements to qualify to this program. Brand needs to be advanced brand registry users and maintain an acceptance rate over 90% of IP claims submitted over the time. And while Project Zero, it speeds up enforcement, it won't address again on map violations, for example. So using the same example with the 6-packs of juice, even though this brand was actually qualified for Project Zero, this was ultimately a packaging issue. So since this program focused only on counterfeit, it wasn't useful, in addressing this specific problem. Okay. So in conclusion, these tools are powerful and can make a big difference, but they aren't one size fits all solution. So to achieve brand protection, you need to combine Amazon's tools with external strategies or tools to address larger challenges and ensure long-term success. So let's discuss on some of these tools beyond Amazon Brand Registry.
Yeah, and
Yeah, this
Paula,
is great. Yeah, jump in, Zach. I just
yeah,
didn't
I
want
was
to
just gonna
comment.
say one thing that I hear a lot, and Aaron, I don't know if you hear a lot too, is I talk to brands about how they're approaching brand protection, and still to this day, I hear brands saying like, "We're good. We have brand registry, and we're in the transparency program," and they're not thinking larger about map enforcement, the seller policies, and all those other things. So I think it's important to kind of, look at those as, like Paula so wonderfully said, important tools, and part of a greater strategy, but. And we'll talk a little bit about this later. Amazon's not necessarily interested in the unauthorized, authorized seller game as much it is the counterfeit game. That's what they tend to care more about in their enforcement.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to bring up the same thing. Is there's, to the scenario where you have if you're the person on the account every day, you see it, you understand that those aren't enough. They are tools, but they're not enough just to be enrolled. But you have the executive teams jumping in and saying, "Hey, we've got MAP, we've got brand registry, and we got the transparency program. Why aren't we good? Like, why aren't we good enough? Why do we need more?" And I mean, I think that's probably what we're going to get into here. But usually that's what comes up, and I think we're in the second phase of this, which is that was round one, and doing all those things, and then letting this brand protection piece roll out and see if you're not doing more, then it's not actually getting taken care of. So the first round was taking that and unauthorized reseller policies and MAP, and then using tools. And now we're at the next phase, which is, okay, let's actually roll all of these things out, because people, I think, especially in the executive teams, were hoping Amazon was going to, with their tool sets, help them, take care of the problem, but that's just not the reality of the situation.
Exactly. Without external tools, you're going to be missing an important part of the picture. So let's discuss on these tools for beyond Amazon Brand Registry. First, we have the monitor and enforcement platforms or softwares. These platforms are essential for managing brand protection efforts across not even Amazon, but multiple channels. Most of these tools are now powered by AI, making them more effective, efficient, and scalable. When selecting a platform or a software, some of the key factors you need to consider is, for example, the number of products you need to monitor, the marketplaces or country that require oversight, the objective of enforcement, if it's or the brand protection goal, whether it's tackling MAP violations, counterfeit again goods, or unauthorized sellers and listings. Next, we have the clear and transparent policies. Strong policies such as distributor agreements, resellers agreements, MAP policies form the foundation for of an effective brand protection strategy. Without any rule book, it is pretty hard to enforce or go beyond, on Amazon on brand protections enforcement efforts. Analytics and reporting tools. And as you were saying, Aaron, yes, you have brand registry, but you don't know what's happening out there. You don't have a report in Amazon brand registry that tells who is out there and how everyone is playing around. So analytics tools are critical to tracking your progress and measuring the impact of your efforts. They help you identify trends or emerging new trends emerging sellers, and so you can adapt your strategy as needed. Well, in other words, having a regular report provide actionable insights so you can adjust enforcement and strategy along the way. Make sure that you're focusing on what and put your efforts on what make the most impact. And last but not least, authentication programs. These programs simplify product tracking and make it easier to identify unauthorized listings or counterfeit products. They also help trace inventory obtained through unauthorized channels, like it could be serial numbers, QR codes, blockchain technology. For example, let's imagine that you have no authorized sellers on Amazon, but suddenly Amazon itself is selling your products. So with an authentication program in-house, you can do a test buy and retrieve the lot serial number, for example, and trace the source of the inventory in your database. This helps you quickly address this issue and take action against this provider or vendor. So by using tools alongside Amazon resources or tools provided by other marketplaces, you can create a well-rounded approach on brand protection.
If you don't have like, how many brands do you see actually have like a brand protection and enforcement like team or person, somebody that's focused on it? I think back like 10 years ago, it was nobody in the digital space, right? This is something that's more recent. Do you see more and more companies have somebody that's focused on it, or do you see like more and more like business dropping into kind of like this advisory portion?
I would say
Well,
just, oh, sorry, go ahead, Paula.
go ahead, please.
No, I was gonna say I'm seeing way more widespread adoption of the technology and the monitoring and some levels of the enforcement. For larger organizations, I have seen brand protection be a position or a division that they are building in as marketplace becomes such an important piece. So they're going to be utilizing some of those other technologies, but it's the policies, the enforcement, and the management of your distributors and your sellers that I think that all starts to kind of come together. And interestingly, we did a survey with BWG recently about brand protection and how brands were taking a look at that. And those insights maintained on that line as well. We saw larger brands in the marketplace that had already brought on an internal person for this position.
So a couple of things, pop into mind here. We have a couple of things that have dropped in here, but is around the clear and transparent policy in the distributor and reseller agreements. Those have been, I think, harder for brands to put in place and to explain upwards why they want to, because you have traditional salespeople going to a distributor who are going to see a significant loss in volume going through a distributor. It's going to be picked up on Amazon, right? But I don't know if you have thoughts around that, and then enforcing those as well.
Yeah, well, it's pretty different in each. I mean, there's a lot of factors that need to be considered to have a straightforward strategy. For example, the size of the company, the industry we're talking about, if this is food products or consumer goods, beauty products. Yeah, there's a lot of factors in it. The size of the distributors even, because many distributors have it protected their own protected policies in-house, so you can pay an extra fee for these distributors to be considered as a protected brand. So yeah, there's many factors that need to be considered when you have distributors involved in the picture. But again, a policy is having a clear distributor policy. It's a pretty easy foundation. So whenever you sign an agreement with these distributors, you can be extra clear on what you're expecting from them. And that part of this deal is for them to communicate to their customers that reselling your products in marketplaces is not allowed.
Awesome. And Julian and Stacy, I see your questions that come in, and Scott, your comments. We'll keep holding those to the end, but if you do have questions, drop them in the chat in the Q&A, and we'll tackle them right at the end. I want to make sure that we can get through all of this content as well.
Excellent.
Awesome. So we talked a bit about what brand protection is. We think a lot about MAP enforcement. We think a lot about just the other sellers, but there are impacts that brand protection has on your overall business. So the first is it's going to mitigate legal and financial risks. If you have counterfeit or expired product out there, that could put you into a legal or regulatory issue that you don't want to be involved with. The other part is if you are maintaining consistent pricing across marketplaces, you're going to have a lot easier relationship with your retailers, with your distributors, because you won't be answering those calls like, why is this product being sold for 20% less on Amazon when you're making me sell it for X on this platform, right? So it's going to mitigate those conversations. It's going to enhance the customer experience. So one of the things that having multiple authorized and unauthorized sellers on a marketplace like Amazon is that your content on your PDP pages can be overwritten or replaced by the content that these other sellers have. That means they might not have the most up-to-date images. They might not have the way you want to describe the product. The title tags might change, or the titles might change. So it's going to enhance that customer experience. It's going to allow them to see the product as it should be seen. It's going to protect brand equity. So again, if they're getting these counterfeit or expired products, there's not only like a legal consideration, there's also the equity of the brand and how it's seen across the marketplace, across consumers. So we don't want to kind of erode that equity by having bad product out there. And then lastly, safeguards revenue. So obviously the first piece, if you're selling at MAP, you're going to have more profitability and a better bottom line. I think that's pretty standard. But you're also going to have a higher buy box win percentage, which is going to impact your advertising. So one thing that we see, and kind of as a holistic agency, we're kind of always evaluating things in terms of how they impact the brand as a whole. And so one of the challenges, one of the frustrations as an advertiser is you work to advertise for these search terms or your own brand terms, and then you can create velocity, momentum within Amazon, only to have one of your resellers drop the price and take all of those sales after you've developed that momentum, after you've developed that velocity. So enforcing MAP is also going to make sure that you have buy box ownership, and that's going to make sure that all of the advertising investment that you're making isn't for naught or is being, utilized as efficiently as possible. Cool. Challenges. Okay. So on the surface, seems really easy. Implement the policy, create the policy, monitor the policy, implement the policy. It's obviously much more challenging than that. So a couple things to look out for. The lack of policies and internal buy-in. So the first thing is creating that policy. Really, really important. Getting each kind of department within an organization to understand and buy in is going to be a challenge. Sales and distribution are going to have concerns about what's going to happen to their partners when their sales go down. Leadership and revenue teams are going to want to understand what happens as we kick those sellers off and how long until we can recapture those purchases through the retail price. So having those discussions and being able to kind of alleviate some of those concerns is really important. There's the distributor concerns, right? So how are we going to handle sales with others that are selling the product? Do we create an authorized seller policy that gives them the ability to sell certain products and not other products, or over map? How are we going to manage that relationship so that we don't frustrate our distributors more than we need to? Challenges with Amazon, we kind of touched on it. Amazon as a company is not truly concerned about our map, the monitoring it or the enforcing of it. They care more about counterfeit. They care about legal and lawsuits, but they're not really doing a ton to support us here. So you really need to seek external help, whether that's a team that you built or a partner that you choose. It's really important. It's funny the amount of people I talk to from Amazon who think brand protection kind of ends at the transparency program, right? There is so much more that we have to do. And that leads us to the last challenge, which is this is going to feel like whack-a-mole, right? Depending on how your authorized or unauthorized seller strategies are created, if you have counterfeiters and people that are buying the product and doing this maliciously, you're going to need to have a monitoring program that enforces and flags these sellers. Ideally, if it's just a seller policy, then these whack-a-mole is less. It's handling these and then making sure that no new ones come up. But these are the main challenges that I continue to see and continue to help brands with as we kind of explore brand protection.
Agree. So let's dive a little bit more about on MAP, or minimum advertised price. This is one of the most effective tools for managing control over your brand's value. MAP sets the lowest price a reseller is allowed to advertise a product for. It helps ensure, again, just as Zach mentioned, a fair competition, equity for your brand, and even protects your brand's reputation. How or why MAP matters? First, it preserves value. Consistent price prevents devaluating your product and reinforces its perception as high quality or even an exclusive product, if it's the case. Second, it maintains profit margins by eliminating undercutting from unauthorized sellers. MAP also ensures a stable revenue stream from both your brand, your own sales, and your authorized partners or resellers. And finally, it fosters a fair competition. When MAP policies are enforced, especially because having a MAP policy just sitting there is not going to be effective at all. But when policies are enforced, authorized sellers have a level played field, if you will, which helps build trust and strengthen long-term relationships. And to give you some perspective on this, a study by Northwestern University revealed that unauthorized retailers are 3 times more likely to violate MAP policies than authorized sellers. So in other words, when you have a MAP policy in place and you are actively communicating and enforcing on it, the probability of price infringement is significantly lower compared to not having a policy at all. So again, brand protection is not just about your Amazon presence. And in this slide, I want to just talk you a little bit on why. So brand protection or your presence affects your entire sales ecosystem, including brick and mortar stores or retailers like Costco. This slide highlights a real-world example of how pricing misalignment can impact omni-channels partnership. At the time of this negotiation, the average price of the product, exemplifying here on Amazon, was $63.99. While Costco required a MAP price of $79.99 to maintain profitability, this price gap made it impossible for Costco to carry this specific product, as it couldn't compete with Amazon's lower price without hurting its margin. So to resolve this issue, we took a strategic approach. First, we established legal foundation with clearly communicating MAP and reseller policy to all stakeholders. Then we sent notice letters to unauthorized sellers, referring again the policies, cease and desist letters to unauthorized sellers again, to clarify, that selling this specific product in Amazon was not permitted. By enforcing this measure, we align pricing across channels, ultimately allowing the brand to meet Costco's requirement and ensure placement of these products in Costco stores. So now that we've discussed, what's brand protection, the challenges that brands face, the importance of having a clear strategy, let's dive into a proven roadmap for effective implementation. First, assessment is the first step, where vulnerabilities on marketplaces are identified, brand goals are defined, and existing policies are reviewed or policies are created to establish, again, a strong foundation. Next, the IP protection. This step involves ensuring, your patents, your trademarks, your copyrights are properly registered. This step also often includes enrolling trademarks in Amazon brand registry for our partners. And simultaneously, the monitoring phase begins. We begin tracking unauthorized sellers, price violations, counterfeit products, and other key metrics, to establish a baseline. It depends, obviously, on the brand's objective or main brand protection goal. The process then moved to the next phase, that is the educating and partnering, which focus on setting clear expectation with authorized sellers and encouraging compliance with the partner brand policy. At the same time, we are building a strong relation. At the same time, we're building this strong relationship with authorized sellers. We are launching the enforcement strategy on unauthorized, for example. This includes some notice letters, cease and desist letters, filling IP claims. This obviously depend on the brands, again, the main goal in the scenario, but this is just some of the tools we use. Again, notice letters, cease and desist, filling IP claims, and remove counterfeit listings, to ensure policies are upheld. And then the final phase, review and adapt, involves regular evaluation and adjustment to address emerging threats, market changes, any new trend, ensuring the strategy remains effective over the time. So while this roadmap provides a general timeline, the progression may differ from brand to brand based on how prepared the brand is. For instance, enforcement can stay early as the second month if policies are already established and ready on their website to be, communicate and begin with the education phase. So let's move to a real world example to see how this roadmap play out in practice. This example focuses on a company that already had presence on Amazon before our partnership. However, this brand didn't have a reseller policy in place, which made it difficult to address unauthorized sellers and pricing inconsistencies out there. So to begin, we work with them to draft and establish a clear reseller policy. This policy outlines specific guidelines for resellers, limitations on where the products could be resold or sold, and the consequences for not compliance. With this foundation, we were able to start enforcing the brand protection strategy effectively. I want to highlight two metrics to show the impact of our efforts: lost sales and win rate percentage. When we start working with this brand, their lost sales were around 177K, and their win rate percentage was just around 27%. Our goal obviously was to reduce the goal sales, improve their win rate, and give them control over by take down as many listings as possible, many unauthorized listings as possible. So our first step or next step was to create, after having the policies ready to be used, was to create a baseline. We set up the brand's information in our software, or products information in our software tools, and began with the assessment and monitoring phase. During this stage, we identify vulnerabilities, track unauthorized sellers, and conduct research to find these sellers' information, contact information. Then we move to the enforcement stage. We send email notices to as many unauthorized sellers as possible. We contacted stores, sending messages directly through their Amazon stores. And in cases where sellers didn't respond, or these stores were top targets and we had no email information available to use, we escalate with certified letters to ensure our message was received. And well, after exhausting all communication efforts, we transitioned to the IP enforcement phase, actively reporting unauthorized listings through Amazon Brand Registry. The results were remarkable, or we're pretty happy with these results. We reduced lost sales by 85% in the first 5 months, bringing them from the 177K to just 27K. The win rate percentage also saw a dramatic increase, jumping from 27% to 92%. This means that the brand recovered over 150K in lost sales. So this easily covers the investment they made in brand protection, obviously, right? So this case study shows how building a solid foundation, starting with a clear reseller policy, enables an effective brand protection. So I have another case study for you. In this second example, for we're seeing well, this example focused on a direct sales company with no operations in Amazon before our partnership. They approached to us because unauthorized sellers were creating ASINs for their products without their authorization. Their main goal was to clear the air of all these rogue listings and sellers, gain control over the marketplace's presence, and eventually open their own Amazon store. This brand already had a reseller policy, and the reseller policy was published on their website, and it was actually a pretty solid policy. It clearly outlined again the limitations on reselling their products outside of direct sales channels and specify the consequences of non-compliance. However, the problem was again that no one was actively enforcing or making any efforts to ensure these consequences were applied. So when we started working with them, there were 107 unauthorized sellers and over 3K rogue listings in Amazon. Imagine it was a lot. So during the communication phase, we sent cease and desist letters to as many sellers as possible, referring the reseller policy and the consequences of non-compliance. And with the request, of course, of removing the listing. So any invoice we received from sellers were provided to the brand so they could trace the source of this inventory and deactivate accounts as needed. So in the first stage, we reduced the number of unauthorized sellers from 107 to only 95, or well, to 95. And the rogue listings from over 3K to 986. However, for sellers who ignore our emails, didn't comply, or we weren't able to reach by email, we moved to the second phase, the IP enforcement. So after helping the brand to enroll the trademarks in brand registry account, we began enforcing IP on these ASINs created by third-party sellers. And within weeks, we reduced the number of active stores from 95 to 7. Enrolled listings dropped from 986 to only 23. So it's important to mention that even when this number looks amazing, I believe it's important to mention what Zach mentioned before. This is a whack-a-mole game. So brand protection is a continuous process. New sellers will always appear. And as they do, we start again with the communication phase, eventually move to the IP enforcement when necessary. The cycles begin. It is not realistic to expect that one day we're just going to wake up and no authorized sellers are going to be in the picture, no rogue listings. But what matters is constant monitoring and consistent enforcement to protect the brand and just keep an eye out there. Today, these brands own their own Amazon store and has created their own ASINs. So our focus is not only on monitoring third-party sellers and rogue listings, but also on enforcing and monitor their legitimate ASINs to ensure no one else lists on these authorized ASINs.
Cool. This is really just a recap of kind of the things I was talking about earlier, which is the impact a proper brand protection strategy has on your whole marketplace business. But there are some comments here and questions that, Aaron, I don't know, do we want to touch on these?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch that have poured in over the chat and the Q&A. Whenever you're ready, I was holding them just a little bit to the end to make sure we got through all the content. Whenever we're ready to jump into those questions, I can kind of guide the conversation through them.
Yeah. I think it's important to kind of communicate a few things. One is there are different brand protection strategies for different brands at different stages and different types of selling. So I see a lot of very strong opinionated people in the chat. There are brands that simply have unauthorized sellers and no MAP policy. And so they need to create a MAP policy. They need to create an authorized seller policy so that they can enforce something, right? So they can work with a legal entity to make sure that that is removed. So for a lot of brands, that is the start to cleaning up their Amazon presence in order to become profitable. So, I do believe that at scale for enterprise, there are some other initiatives and considerations that need to be discussed. One note here, so just to kind of answer a few of these, we had one comment that said unauthorized sellers and counterfeit are two different buckets. You can't claim to have counterfeit products only because you don't know the seller. Totally agree. We only put together counterfeit and unauthorized seller because they both kind of come under that umbrella of brand protection. Counterfeit is its own set of tools and concerns and communication. Authorized and unauthorized seller policy, MAP enforcement is kind of a separate concern, but we put them together because they are often monitored and we consider them in the same breath between unauthorized and counterfeit.
Yeah, but a key note here is you should not claim something is counterfeit if you are not able to prove that it is counterfeit. Because if it's just gray market, it's not counterfeit.
Sure.
Just over the past few years, there've been some brands that got into a lot of trouble when they claimed something was counterfeit. They got another seller account shut down. Come to find out, it wasn't counterfeit. It was just, I don't know, too loose of a supply chain, and they were getting legitimate product and selling it. And what ends up happening then is that seller ends up coming back and suing for lost revenue. And so that's a very, very touchy one, but I would say don't go around and just say, hey, counterfeit, because Amazon will shut down that seller.
Oh gosh, no. Did we imply? I hope we didn't imply
No,
that.
you didn't. No, you didn't.
Okay.
Sometimes I
Okay,
get
cool.
concerned about brands if they're
Cool.
getting
Yeah.
ready.
No,
That's
I
an
mean, I
easy
think we all
button.
know play by the rules on
Yeah.
Amazon, right? I mean, like that's like always white hat, never gray. It's not worth the retribution that comes down. So,
Yeah.
part of these policies and working with a partner or internal or creating them is to understand how do I figure out if this is counterfeit or not counterfeit? And how do I enforce if it's counterfeit or if it's an authorized seller, right? And understanding the difference and the ramifications of claiming one versus the other. So yeah, I think a good partner will help you steer clear of that. So no one is thinking that they're big braining it and cutting some corners there. Cause you're right. That would be pretty disastrous.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Another
just
one.
to
Oh yeah, jump in.
sorry,
Yeah,
just
please.
to reinforce on that thought, if you're submitting claims stating a counterfeit product without it being a counterfeit product, you are taking a high risk of being revoked from your IP reporting privileges in Amazon brand registry. So yeah, brand registry, again, it's a powerful tool, but you need to be pretty careful on the verbiage you're using and the way you approach each IP claim submission. Definitely not the way to go, reporting false counterfeit claims.
Yeah. Awesome. So another one, and let me know, Paula and Zach, if this is just another whole webinar, because it is a massive issue right now. And it's come in a few different times, both in the Q&A and the chat, around dealing with product and or sellers from out of the country with your product. And that's super complicated. I don't know if that's something we can address a little bit here, or if or if we do another whole webinar specifically on that.
Are you saying they're selling on other geo markets, or they're selling the seller itself is from another country and they're selling on Amazon US?
Ooh, so a couple gray market product coming from other countries where their limitations and enforcement are still an issue. How do you keep product from other countries selling through US sellers or Amazon sellers? So that's other product. And let's see here. Yeah, so that would the first one of these from Julian was around the product coming in from outside. And then Alan here selling on Amazon when the seller is located in China, for example. And that might be a whole nother
Um,
webinar, which more than happy
yeah,
to do as well.
yeah, we need to know like further details on that. I mean, is this product is you own this trademark outside the country? Yeah, there's a lot of factors to take under consideration to effectively enforce. But yeah, let's say that. Yeah, sorry, I don't want to just explore in
Yeah. I have a
yeah,
feeling just because
enough
it's come up a
information.
ton, we probably just need to do a whole webinar specifically on that topic.
Yes.
My guess is we could schedule it for 30 minutes and it might go 2.5 hours. An Another question that comes up is how do we manage sellers who consistently violate MAP policies despite repeated warnings? This is the whack-a-mole thing that pops up over and over.
Yeah.
It exasperates people.
Yeah, I mean, you enforce it. You stop selling to them. You know, like they're get if you know where they're getting their product, they're buying from you and they're a distributor and they continue to sell at a, and violate their authorized seller policy, then sometimes hard conversations are have to be had, right? And I think kind of not to launch into a different answer to a different question, Aaron, but one of the things that you have said and I've seen here is like map is garbage, right? Map doesn't mean anything. Map's not worth the paper that it's written on. And I agree to a certain point. I think map in some industries and some distributor relationships is really hard. But if a brand is keeping consistent map and asking their sellers to maintain map, that is something that we can enforce through an authorized seller policy. And that is something that is not worthless by any means. Keeping tight channel strategy is obviously the number one way to make sure that you're owning your brand on all of these marketplaces. But some brands don't have the luxury of that. Some brands are starting, behind the line and they let everyone else sell their product for a while and they need to catch up. And so, without MAP, without an authorized seller policy, there is nothing to enforce and push back on. So I don't think that MAP's this magical thing that solves everything. And you mentioned map and now everyone shivers and follows suit, but it isn't something that should be ignored. It's got to be part of that overall strategy.
Mm-hmm. And another not as popular way to go is to work to identify their inventory source and cut off supply. So having a do not sell list in-house, it's a pretty effective strategy. I know that many brands try to avoid these, to not be perceived as a conflicted brand or a hard brand to work with, but this is pretty effective with if you're able to identify this seller and they are purchasing straight from you, you can cut off their supply until they made the commitment to comply with your map policy.
Yeah, and what I really think that we're getting at here, I like Gabriella as well. I think moving away from the term map and enforcing channel strategy, like I don't know if it's necessarily moving away. I get exactly what you're saying is you have to look at this from it's a holistic like policy and strategy that you have to put in place, and it's not just map, right? It's almost like this, or it's just brand protection strategy as a whole. And maybe that's what you're saying, Gabriella. And we'll follow up for sure. Because I'd love
Can
to
I point
understand a
out
little
something
bit.
too, though, that I don't know if everyone's thinking about? Think about like someone that sells at Costco, right? And you can buy a pallet at Costco and it's a flavor of something, right? And those flavors aren't available on Amazon. So then they go and they package this together and then they're selling on Amazon. And it's a real product, right? And it is being sold on Amazon. And you had a distributor relationship, but you're not going to go, get Sam's Club or Costco over a barrel on this. So in those cases, how do you choose to handle those resellers? Do you just let them do that, or do you create a policy to reinforce map channel strategy, etc.? Like, right, I agree. I think a lot of it is semantics, but a lot of this comes down to understanding where your distributors and the people that you sell to are selling, having that conversation about what they're allowed to do. And so, again, it goes back to brand protection being a software. No, it's not. It's a conversation. It's a series of policies. It is a brand-wide understanding of how they're going to handle that relationship, right? And that's not necessarily something that one person can solve, but that's, I think, what we're getting to is that all of that sits under brand protection, and that can be mapped, that can be the counterfeit policies and programs. But I really good, I mean, I probably the most webinar chat I've seen on one of these that I've been on. I really
Yeah, and
appreciate
there's some
the
super
excitement.
specific questions that really quick, Julian, MAP is a tool of brand protection, not the other one. Unless you have distribution under control, controlling online minimum advertising, it just won't work. I think a couple of things that are really encouraging. So one thing is there's a lot of very specific questions. More than happy to connect you with Zach and Paula afterwards to kind of do a deep dive because otherwise I think we could go down a rabbit hole of it depends and about a lot of back and forth on specific questions that a lot of times brands don't want to necessarily share on a webinar, and I don't blame them, but it's worth that follow up. That we're at a point now where there's there's a strategy, there's a timeline, there's ROI, metrics that are put in place that now as brand managers and leaders in the digital space can actually execute on. And I guess one of the concerns that I have is just around everybody wants to take this on, but nobody has the time to take this on. So is this traditionally, right, with Blue Wheel as a whole, a lot of what we do is around paid media and Amazon management. Is this a whole offering that you have where a brand can just reach out and say, hey, help us manage all of this? Because I can't go hire a person to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where Paula and her team are going to really sit down and understand what are the challenges you're having. Do you have these policies in place? Across what channels are they occurring? How frequently are they happening? We can evaluate the revenue impact of kicking these resellers off and regaining that at retail price. And then have, those conversations about how do we build out the proper program? How do we build out the proper policy? That's where we are incredibly comfortable is kind of setting that up and helping a brand build and making a judgment call with them, helping them make that call about what services, tools, and policies are right for them given their selling strategy, right? So it's not a one size fits all. It's not, hey, you need to be on this tool. It's no, let's sit down and talk about it. How is it being managed? Is everyone on board? Is it being enforced? What does enforcement look like? And then a big thing that we do too is help monetize or enumerate what this relationship could look like. So there's a big inertia when it comes to kicking these people off or even creating the strategy itself, right? They said, well, we're going to lose money. We're going to lose sales short term. And that's definitely going to be the case. But we can help identify how we recapture that sale, what it looks like, how you become more profitable over time. So I think that's the other piece is just kind of helping the internal teams align and see the value of a program like this is definitely where a partner such as Blue Whale, but any good partner can be supportive.
No, I think it's great. I think, yeah, of the past few years, we've had, unauthorized reseller policies pop up and MAP pop up. And then, providers that do that. We also have the website monitoring, marketplace monitoring tools that then flag that, hey, there's are these. But at the end of the day, you need one holistic plan to execute on that's using all of these different tools. And there hasn't been, like a singular source. So there might be a single law firm that you can go with and just tie it all together and they're fantastic. I think this is really cool. So as we kind of get to the end of time here, uh, again, I'm sure you're more than happy to share the deck with people. More than happy for us to make connections over to Paula and Zach for sure. Look for an email from me. I'd love to have a conversation with you. But yeah, Zach, are there some key takeaways as we get to the last minute here?
It's hard work. Put in the policy. It has a bigger impact than just the one-to-one removal of the seller. And even if you know, you just want to talk shop about the brand protection and the way you see it, happy to have those conversations as well. So you know, whether you're kind of starting that journey and looking to monetize or figure out the not monetize, but figure out the impact it's going to have, or you're further on in that journey and you're looking for some more advanced strategies or insights, happy to have those conversations.
Well, awesome. Again, really appreciate you and everybody over at Blue Wheel as a whole. Paula, thanks so much for you lending us your expertise in the deck and all the information. With that, we're going to wrap up this webinar here. Again, thanks everybody for the great questions. Thank you for the great commentary. More than happy to put you in connection with the team at Blue Wheel if you have things you want to bounce off them that are very, very specific. Look for a follow-up email from me. I'm going to reach out. I'd love to have a conversation with you and pick your brain on, hey, what are other topics we could cover as well. So with that, we're going to wrap up. Thanks again, Zach. Thanks, Paula. You guys, everybody have a great day.
Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.